Yeah, he talks about, again, this is a subject we hear about all the time. The German mortars and gunners must have registered too because they had the exact range of every foot of hedgerow held by the battalion. On the 10th of July, they covered almost every foot of the hedgerow. That sort of gunnery was rough on the men. They never knew when the first round would fall, but once it had splattered with its flat crash, they all knew that 6 or maybe a dozen more were coming, each one a little further up or down the hedgerow. When you heard that first one, you pulled the bottom of your foxhole right up to your belly and prayed. When you heard the second one, you knew whether or not they were coming your way. If they were coming towards you, it got right rough. Each round was a little closer, and they were so damn deliberate about it that the waiting was worse than the crash of the shell itself. You lay there and counted the seconds between the shells until you knew that the next one was yours. The 20 seconds or so was the longest one in the world, because you never knew if you were safe until the shell hit. It could hit anywhere outside your hole, even a matter of inches, and you were okay. If it hit in the hole with you, you'd never know it, of course. Actually, only a few shells ever made direct hits on foxholes, but some did, and nearly every man had seen a foxhole that had been hit. There was always the little tail fin section left on the surface, and after the litter bearers had come and gone, there was only a pool of dark muck to show that somebody had been in the hole. It happened twice that day. So, this one, I don't know if you quite followed what's happening. These guys are in a hedgerow, so they're in a linear position, right? And the way you work mortars is you make small adjustments on them. Yeah. And the way that you fire at targets when you don't know what the distance is, you put the first one's going to be long, and then you adjust a lot shorter, so then you come back and it's called bracketing. So you might come back 5 clicks. And then now you're hit in front of the target. Now you go back. Now you go forward again 4 clicks. It hits a little behind the target. Now you come back 3, 2, 1, and then boom, you hit your target.
So on the mortar thing, there's like an actual tool that kind of adjusts.
Well, you're adjusting the elevation.
Yeah. So it's like there's like a little dial
up and down,
a
little dial. It's going up and down to fire at what angle you want to fire it at. Yeah. So what you do is when you shoot a mortar, you the first one you go long, the second one you estimate short, and then you basically can split the difference between those two. Right. And you're going to be pretty close. Yeah. And like you work with a legit mortar team, and the third round is going to be pretty damn spot on. Yeah. But what he's saying here is the Germans, they already knew the exact settings for where to put. We see movement at this part of the hedgerow. They don't need to take. They just go to their pre-designated settings. Yes. They can put a round right on that.
So they kind of figured it out beforehand.
Yeah, they figured it out beforehand. They know the exact, because what you have to, the distance. Yeah. You know the distance that the mortar shoots at a certain elevation, but what they don't know is if you're trying to shoot at something that you don't know exactly where it is, well, then you have to estimate the distance, which is a little bit challenging to do. Now, a good sniper or a good mortarman are going to be pretty close. Snipers know that, hey, this thing, they get it down to really, how many meters it is. And same thing with a good mortarman. But even that, when you're talking about a far distance of 800,000 meters, you might be off by 50 meters. And that's, being off by 50 meters with a mortar is a big distance. It's not going to kill the target that you're trying to hit. But with these Germans at this point, they already have everything measured and dialed. They have a range card is what we call it. A range card means like I know when you set up in a position, you get out your rangefinder and you find out what the range and distance of everything that you're looking at. So you know exactly how far it is. You can dial in your scope. Boom. Oh, I see somebody over at that corner of that building. That's 832 meters. Boom. Crack.
Remember that game Battleship? Remember that?
I do remember that game Battleship. School? Yeah.
Like you can't see it, but you
yeah. And you're trying to figure out
a little bit.
It is. You're basically your first round's going to be a little bit. If you hit something, then you gotta adjust.
Close.
Yeah. So what the Germans, like I said, the Germans had these things pre-registered, and then what they would do is they would just hit the whole hedgerow. They'd go right down the line, and these guys knew that once the first round goes, it's either going to be moving away from me on the hedgerow, or toward me.
Oh, yeah.
And so can you imagine the damn pressure when you're sitting there? That first round goes, and now the next round, where's it going to be further away from me? Meaning the Germans are are dialing away from me,
Right.
or are they dialing towards me?
Yeah.
And then how many rounds are they going to go?
Yeah.
Because if they do enough rounds,
Yeah.
you're going to be all right.
Yeah, that's Battleship.
Or you're not.
Right there. The game, that's exactly how that
And what's interesting is those, like he said, if the mortar hits outside of your foxhole by an inch, you're probably going to be okay because the mortar blast goes up and out when it hits the ground. If it hits in your foxhole, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of randomness that you're dealing with. All right.